2. Welcome back to WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. This is sort of a hybrid segment here of Baltimore Positive. Don Moeller joins me here in the studio. And just like sort of regular old WNST, what's going on in the sports world? We have a lot of Bill Coles here. I'm wearing the Bill Cole roofing hat with the Keep Preakness in Baltimore pin. And this isn't the Bill Cole roofing guy who joined. This is the other Bill Cole. They do know each other. Bill Cole, former city council head who headed up all things Preakness and Pimlico. Bill, I know, man, you've been blowing me off for 6 months. You've been, away from the family. You've been in a sequestered location trying to keep the Preakness here. You've been texting me back, we're going to save it, we're going to save it, we're going to save it. I was very, very heartened, and I know you saw my text on Monday morning when I saw that it looks like we're going to save this, right?
Yeah. And I, your support has meant a lot to me. Many people. But I always kept the faith. It wasn't something I was willing to lose.
Bill, for you with keeping this and where it is and what's been reported and what's still yet to come, where are we in the real deal of, okay, well, there's a newspaper that says we've got a deal, and then the fact that all the buttons need to be tied up and when this gets down to Annapolis?
Right. So we did finish 120 days of negotiation and came out of that process with what we think to be the best viable plan for retaining the Preakness at Pimlico and creating Laurel as a sustainable year-round racing venue. It is probably the best plan for the entire industry that has been put forward that ends the fighting. Obviously, I was a part of that fighting, but I think it's a positive resolution. And now we head down to Annapolis. We're working on the legislation right now, drafting one big bill that includes all the elements for Pimlico and Laurel and the framework of the deal. And we will then take it down to the General Assembly in January, and hopefully they will give the plan that we've worked on 2 thumbs up, and we will have saved this industry.
Well, Lord knows, 35 years I've been talking about Preaknesses here and comings and goings. I guess the last 15 years we've been talking about what happens. I'm out there last year and the grandstand's closed and Damien O'Doherty's handed me pins. He had one job. At least he got it right. I'll let him know that.
He got it right.
But I guess this is going to come back down to, okay, so what's it cost? What's the real deal here going to be to taxpayers? Who's paying for this? Where are the Stronachs involved in this? Where's the city and the state involved in this? Because, I go back to slots and pre-casino and all the things that were going to save the Preakness. And the cost is always the issue, right? Like, we could build
Absolutely.
it bigger and better, but who's paying for it?
Bill, walk us through the For Dummies version of the deal.
Because we're dummies.
Gotcha, Don. So what we decided to do, and I'll credit Alan Rifkin, who obviously was one of the other lead negotiators on behalf of the Stronach Group, and Alan Foreman, who represented the industry. What we agreed to do from the very early days was that we needed to live within our means. That meant no new general fund appropriations, no new taxes, no new fees. What we were trying to do is find a economic structure that worked within existing resources. And what we came out was a plan that uses the existing racing facilities renewal account, what we call RFRA, which is the slots dollars that go into racetrack improvements, along with a new $5 million dedication of funding from the thoroughbred industry purse account and $3.5 million from the Baltimore City local impact grant to Park Heights. These are all slots dollars. They are basically taxes on casinos that exist already. And what we have done is figured out a way to use those existing resources, extend them out a little bit further, and bond them to create a present-day pot of money to do all the improvements virtually simultaneously. So we used existing funding sources to meet our needs, and we are very confident that the funding that we have put together is something that will pass the test at Annapolis.
So I had the good privilege and the honor of going up to Saratoga. I'm sure you saw it. I saw Hooting the Blowfish this summer. Made my trek up there. You know, I've been to Churchill Downs many times. You know, I've been to Gulfstream. You know, I've been to Del Mar. You know, I mean, I'm not new to the rodeo, and I had never seen any of these drawings till this week, Bill. It's kind of remarkable, right? Like, I'm going to be over at the visitor center where there's all this glass where you and I live across the street from there.
Yep.
The visual of what this looks like almost looks like the Clinton Library or something. It's this gigantic glass structure where it still looks classy and awesome and cool, and you stand about, and there's some sitting area and some green space, but it's not the structure of Oriole Park at Camden Yards with green seats with cup holders, because that's not what racing is. That's not what it's going to be. I mean, I would take my hat off and tip it to you if it did not have my Keep the Preakness in Baltimore pin on it, and say that I don't know who came up with all of this, but I look at it as a citizen, as someone who loves Baltimore, as someone that pays taxes, as someone that loves sports and has built my life around sports, and thinking, there's no way that these people are going to figure out how to. They don't want to stay. I'm not sure how many people here want to keep it. And I got to tell you what, man, you rolled your sleeves up, and I hope all this comes to fruition. But figuring out the facility part, which was always going to be the big expense, and how to build something that feels classy, a place I want to go, without having the expense of having it be the Taj Mahal, you know?
That's exactly right. Look, you went to Saratoga. I did as well. That is an event. It's an experience. It's an old facility, but what you have there are people walking around. It's not.
It's a
very
park.
Few people
it's a park.
Exactly
literally.
Right.
You know.
Very few people sit in fixed seats. That's just not the way people are consuming sports these days. So, rather than build a facility for the 1960s, we decided to look at what a modern facility looks like today. And what you look for are spaces that are pliable. In other words, you can convert them to different things in different years.
The picture of this looks like something I'd see in D.C. that would be like a national monument. You agree with that, Don? Just the architecture.
Yeah, it's very
of it.
attractive, sure.
Well, we want it to be iconic. And look, it's the second jewel of the Triple Crown. It needs to be iconic. And also, this is an opportunity to showcase the city. As we know, having that national TV exposure every year is important. Having a modern facility that accommodates the second jewel of the Triple Crown highlights the great assets that are there, and also harkens back to the history. We created a little berm in the infield to harken back to the old Hilltop moniker. So I think we've got all the key elements in there, and most importantly, it's going to be a great experience for the fans. That's what this was built for.
Well, and how much a part of this, Bill, and it seems to me that the real piece of the puzzle that allowed all this to work was also the increased investment in Laurel. I mean, talk to us about,
because they spent a lot of money in Laurel
right.
already, and that's also. I'm not anti-Laurel, right? I don't think any of us were anti-Laurel. It's you can't have the Preakness, literally, right?
That's right, and Nestor, that's exactly what was my approach. Is I want Laurel to have everything it needs to have, but don't want it to take the Preakness down there. And when we agreed early on that we would do everything humanly possible to keep the Preakness at Pimlico, that was a turning point. They agreed that our number one goal was to keep it there, but you also then, to Don's point, had to address the issue of year-round sustainable racing. And you really can only do that in one location. It's impossible to have one purse supporting two full-time tracks. So Pimlico becomes your event space. Laurel becomes your day-to-day hub of training and racing operations with a brand-new modern facility, modern, brand-new barns, and an artificial surface replacing one of the turf tracks that allows for a safer racing surface for training. And when you have inclement weather, it certainly is going to lead to fewer scratches because people can move the race from the turf to that Tapeta track, the artificial track. I think, and I've heard it very directly from many in the industry, including Alan Foreman, who's been representing the thoroughbred industry in Maryland for 4 decades, that this will make Laurel and the state of Maryland the epicenter of horse racing, if not in the Mid-Atlantic, in the country.
So, Bill, is this one of those stories where the last line in the article ought to be, and now the hard work begins? And if that's true, outline for us the hard work that begins.
is really the heavy lift in Annapolis. Our legislative leaders continue the great work they've done in supporting our compromise solution. The presiding officers have been terrific so far, the Speaker and the Senate President. All the key leaders around the state have given the tentative thumbs up. Of course, they want to spend some more time digging through it. But the big lift is Annapolis. If we make it through the legislative session with this omnibus racing bill that provides for the funding for Pimlico and Laurel, and it's all tied together. You can't do one without the other. If that happens, we can actually start as late as end of 2020.
For you, with getting this done and making this palatable, it would seem to me y'all get behind closed doors with a bunch of lawyers and the Stronach people and the city and the state to come out with something and to say this is going to have to be palatable, right? I mean, nobody's shoving anything down anybody's throat. I mean, I've read this as a citizen. I've read this as a sports fan, as a guy that likes a horse race now and again, but also has watched the deterioration of the industry here over 30 years, including all the slots nonsense that went on at the turn of the century, which felt like it went on forever. And now that we have casinos around here, it felt like they were never going to come. But this, at the end of the day, you couldn't come out of the room last week with something that's going to get shot down 3 months from now down in Annapolis, right? Like part of this was it needed to be win-win-win for everybody. I mean, what in your play defense here for me? What would shoot this down? Who wouldn't like this, and what would they say about this?
Well, you're right. I mean, we spent the last probably month poking holes in our own plan, figuring out what even the sharpest critics could say in the way we've structured the deal. And we certainly can anticipate those arguments. And we're not, I mean, the biggest one, and Don will appreciate this, is we're trying not to compete with the very important education interests that are also going to happen this session.
We've been talking about it all
day. It's all we're talking about is Kerwin. By the way, I know, even as much as you love horse racing, you probably think Kerwin's more important.
Well, so here's the thing, though. When you actually look at the industry itself, for me, I was very passionate about keeping the Preakness in Baltimore because of the very direct economic impact that event has on the city. $32 million annually, 53 in the region. Those are big numbers. But for the industry, 700,000 acres are preserved in Maryland because of the horse racing industry. Tens of thousands of jobs, more than $1 billion in economic activity annually on that industry. It's very important to the state's economy. So, to Nestor's point, watching the facilities decline has been painful because it really does affect the viability long-term of that industry. At some point, the owners and the trainers go, well, I'm just going to move to Delaware. I'm going to move to Virginia.
Oh, they did. They did for years. They left here.
And if that were to accelerate, Bill, you're absolutely correct. I talked all of the time about the economic impact of the horse breeding industry in Baltimore County. It is a major, big-ticket item in Baltimore County's economy.
Think about how many of those farms, Don, would be converted to residential properties.
Correct.
You'd have, and then it goes to the school overcrowding. There are a lot of reasons that people around the state should celebrate this solution from a smart growth perspective.
Yep. Did you?
It really does.
Did you anticipate, Bill, the pushback? And you're a smart guy, so I guess I'm going to answer my own question. But the pushback from Prince George's County?
Not really, but we will work it out with them. I mean, because the primary focus was very clearly on Pimlico and Laurel, Prince George's County does have a closed facility that has existed for decades as well, but it's been primarily shuttered since 2012, the Bowie Racetrack, which is a training-only complex. We did not spend nearly as much time working on that one because the idea was that it was going to remain closed. So in that regard, Prince George's County, and rightfully so, would like to have a very serious conversation as part of this project as to what happens to the Bowie training complex. We have floated the idea that perhaps it would be best donated to Bowie State or the city of Bowie. But at the end of the day, it will be up to the legislature to determine what happens to the Prince George's County property. and we'll be supportive.
So ongoing discussions there. How about the last one that Nestor and I just sort of chuckled because we've all seen it, is the ongoing family feud. Can you talk a little bit about the Frank and Belinda Stronach and how you work through those dynamics? That probably isn't in your job description, right?
Well, it does. It certainly played in because we raised those issues during the last legislative session when we were fighting to get them to the table to negotiate. And clearly, there's a lot of family dynamics there that are impossible to describe and very painful for those that are close to it. And we certainly touched upon it in our negotiations. We are confident that Belinda has the legal and exclusive right to make this deal. It's unfortunate that it continues to play out in public, and you can tell that it affects the entire family. From my standpoint, though, we're a bit inoculated from it because this deal, very much like a stadium authority project with Oriole Park and Ravens Stadium, the property and the improvements will be owned by the entity we create, hopefully something through MSA, and they become tenants. So we're not as tied in the future. We're not as tied to the Stronach Group, the whims of the Stronach Group, and whoever may be in charge at any particular moment. So I think for the long term, we've protected the industry by making certain that there's some additional accountability at Pimlico and Laurel. More importantly, this will play out, but it's going to be years in the making in Canadian courts. Our project will be done long before anything in the internal family politics is resolved.
Yeah, the Preakness is coming third Saturday next May.
So it's coming.
That's right. And every third Saturday after that.
And you know what? My wife's going to want a nicer hat if you go upscale, with the facility out there, Bill. Well, hey, take care of yourself, rest up, and we'll get you working on Angelos and Oriole lease, too.
Bill, thanks.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Literally, thanks for all your hard work on this.
Long form next time. Bill Cole, the other Bill Cole, not the Cole Roofing Cole. They keep Preakness in Baltimore. You got two Coles. See that?
Great work, Baltimore treasure.
Cole Roofing, and then keep Baltimore in Preakness. What do you make of this?
I think it's great news. I think that when I woke up and saw the headline, like so many, I was shocked, and again, I think it's a credit to Bill and the folks. And
I just know how hard. Bill's somebody I've known a long time.
I think anybody that knows these kinds, how difficult these negotiations are, I tip my hat to Bill Cole, the entire team. Again, we always say it's not going to be one thing. It's going to be a lot of things that make Baltimore better. This was one of those things.
Keeping the Preakness is one brick in the wall.
Right.
He's Don Moeller. I'm Nestor Aparicio. We're doing Baltimore Positive. We're doing bye-week bonus activity around here all week long. You can find out all the stuff we're doing out at BaltimorePositive.com. Make sure you go check that stuff out during the bye week. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Baltimore Positive, and we never stop talking Preakness in Baltimore sports.